It's statewide. People are taking it very seriously. So it's
Well, that's the plan. So
Well, it is 5:30, and do you know if Supervisor Madrone is joining us, or should we just go ahead and get started?
I thought he had said he would attend. One moment.
I don't know if I have his number, but we can still get started, and then he can come
Okay.
in and attend to
Okay.
that. Since we're all here and we only have Elaine for so long. So let's
Right.
go ahead and call this meeting to order. And we'll do a roll call. Is Meredith Matthews here?
Here.
And Elaine Hogan?
Yes, here.
Robin Smith?
Aye.
Good to see you, Robin. And Frank Wilson?
Here.
Welcome, Frank. And Steve Madrone is currently absent. And we'll get started with the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the HWMA board and will be enacted upon by one motion unless a specific request for review is made by a board member or member of the public. The consent calendar will not be read. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless pulled for discussion. Would anyone like to pull any item from the consent calendar? No. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on an item on the consent calendar? Okay. Would anyone like to entertain a motion about this consent calendar?
I make a motion that we accept the consent calendar as read.
I'll second that.
And was that Robin Smith and who seconded?
Yes.
Who seconded?
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Who seconded?
I seconded Meredith Matthews.
Thank you, Robin, and thank you, Meredith. Any other questions or comments on these items? Okay. All in favor?
Madam Chair, I've joined the meeting. Steve Madrone.
Yes, Mr. Madrone is in the house, as it were.
Excellent. Good to have you. All right. Just to give you a quick summary around the consent calendar items, and Robin has made a motion to approve it, and Meredith, Representative Smith has made a motion to approve, and Representative Matthews seconded that, and we were just getting to the vote. Supervisor Madrone. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Motion passes unanimously. And we will move to oral and written communications. This time is provided for people to address the board to submit written communications concerning matters not on this agenda. Board members may respond to statements, but any request that requires board attention will be referred to staff for review. Reasonable time limits may be imposed on both the total amount of time allotted for this item and on the time permitted to each individual speaker. Such time allotment or portion thereof shall not be transferred to other speakers. Are there any members of the public who would like to submit oral or written communication at this time?
I believe Julia has some input.
Okay, Julia.
So I'm Julia Peterson with Caltrans Clean California, and I was not able to get onto the agenda, but I figured I would spend just a minute or two that you have at the beginning. Caltrans has a real interest in CRV redemption in Humboldt County. At present, we're finding large bags of CRV containers on the sides of the highways, as though perhaps someone was planning to take them elsewhere and they fell off of the vehicle. And in the past, those cans and bottles would have been picked up almost instantly, and that's not happening. And so we're finding much more litter of CRV on the highways. And we're very interested in possibly partnering with Clean California and Humboldt Waste Management to help with the CRB solution. We don't know what that is, but we're very interested in how we could help. And so that's really what I'm here to talk about today.
Excellent.
So
Thank you.
thank you.
And
Yeah.
folks know that if an item hasn't been agendized, we can't speak to it within the meeting. But we can ask at a later point to have it on the agenda. Or it could be spoken to in some sense on the CRV item that is later on the agenda. Are there any other members of the public that wish to make comment? Okay, seeing this, we will close oral and written communications and move on to item number 4. Receive SB 1383 organic food waste presentation from Edgar and Associates and give direction to for the path forward.
Evan, you have the floor.
Well, thank you. Good evening, Chair and Authority members. I'm Evan Edgar. I'm here in Sacramento. I've been retained to implement 1383 under the current scope of work that started a few months ago. Under task 2, this was a scope of work about always keeping green waste in county. That's a dedication. We're going to do that. And then as part of 1383, you have to divert 75% of the organics from landfills by 2025. That's both residential and commercial. So what we're suggesting is when it comes to the residential co-collection, we put it in bags and separate it. And because SB 619 was passed and a lot of cities and have placed 619 on their agenda, but in general, there's a 1-year phase-in that Cal Recycle will not have any administrative penalties for the first year. So this program would start, as soon as 1/1/2023 without any fear of penalties. So a lot of people are working with Cal Recycle right now to have different schedules, but that's the goal, to have the program start as soon as that. And I've been meeting with Recology and Humboldt Sanitation on different collection programs. I'm putting in the roadmap, and the roadmap will be working with staff next week on that when I come up for 2 days on March 3rd and 4th. So we want to keep the co-collection of bags separate, and then how we do that, and then commercial food waste will come here as well. We can modify the solid waste facility permit at the transfer station to separate the green from the food waste. And then part of the scope was to look at the food waste export capacity, could be 3 to 5 years, issue an RFP for those facilities, and at the same time, develop in-count food waste capacity. So that's my scope of work under task 2. And where we're at on the process is that one option we're looking at is the relocation of the Eureka Recycling Center. A lot of CRVs are closing statewide. There's a problem statewide. There's a lot of issues. You guys know about them. But one thing about the Eureka Recycling Center is that it's within a solid waste facilities permit boundary. In order to permit a solid waste facilities permit, like a compost facility, like a landfill, like a material recovery facility, it can take 2, 3, 5 years. So it's a big deal to try to permit a organics transfer facility when you already have one within the recycling center. Meanwhile, a lot of recycling centers can be sited within existing zoning that is a lot easier to relocate a recycling center in heavy industrial or light industrial than it is to try to permit organic processing facility with a full solid waste facilities permit. So what would this organic processing building do? Well, it's enclosed, within a solid waste permit boundary, which is great. It's about 19,000 square feet, and it's covered for stormwater management, and it meets all state minimum standards. With 1383 targeted tons, we're looking at about 16,000 new tons of commercial food waste and organics that would need to be handled by 2025. On a residential side, there's about 10 to 12,000 tons per year being handled now, with up to another 11,000 new tons of green waste and wood waste that are currently inside of that's going to the landfill. So what a solid waste permit amendment does, you can package it as a 30-day approval process with the County Environmental Health Division. And on March 4th, I'm going to come up for my site visits. I'll be meeting with Environmental Health to verify this permitting process. I've done this about 20 locations statewide. It's a no-brainer. The permitting documents are easy to put together, but it's a quick pathway for compliance with 1383 to re-permit this organic processing building. And this could be done well before January 1st, 2023. This is what it looks like today, the solid waste facilities permit. Down in the middle, you see that cross-hatched area. And that is the current Eureka Recycling Center. And then that would be repurposed, and it will take a little while to get it ready, a couple months in order to get it ready for this, should we follow the pathway. But on the north side of the building, we'll bring in commercial food waste with different transfer and processing options. And on the south side, we'll bring the residential coal collected in, where there'll be some type of floor sort, where the bagged food waste will be removed from the green waste, and the green waste will continue to stay in county and go to West Green under current contract. And that bagged food waste would go in with the commercial food waste to be processed and transferred. So that's what I just stated. Well, if you don't remove the bagged food waste from the residential green waste, Cower Cycle considers it a food waste. So that would have to be exported out of county to a food waste processing facility, and that's not good. There's a commitment to keep green waste in Humboldt County. So by having this processing area and low check area, we can remove all the contamination and remove the bagged food waste, and clean green remains and stays in county. The commercial organics can be placed in a bunker inside the building and transferred out under a 3 to 5 year period to a permitted food waste facility. On my way up to Humboldt County next week, I'm stopping by Cold Creek Landfill in Willits. They were the previous facility that you guys used back in the last pilot program. Plus, I'm stopping by Lake County. They're a permitted facility. And there's several others I'm putting in my roadmap, which I will be submitting next week. So, and there's a lot of flexibility. Once you're inside the building, you can do more with food waste if you want to do further processing or just direct transfer. There's a lot of flexibility, a lot of opportunity. So there will be a short-term RFP to transfer the food waste to a permitted compost facility in the North State. Dry Creek doesn't want it because Dry Creek, I talked to the owner up there, and they're not permitting any food waste compost facilities. And in theory, in practicality right now, all that food waste is going to Dry Creek right now within the MSW. So it'll be separated out and be transferred southbound to a compost facility versus northbound or northeast to Dry Creek landfill. So what does it take to part of permitting local food waste capacity? When I come up next week, and we had a lot of telephone interviews, that I'm interviewing all current compost facilities and try to calculate the 15 years of dedicated capacity. SB 1383 requires that we have 15 years of capacity. And so we're working on all the different facilities, and one facility may want to venture into doing food waste composting. So we're going to visit them next Thursday when I come up and see that opportunity. Plus, we're reviewing the anaerobic digestion opportunity at the local wastewater treatment plants that were explored back in 2010 and 2012. I've been permitting facilities for 30 years, and sometimes to permit a compost facility and organic processing facilities, it's 3 to 5 years, and it's taken 10 years in other locations. And you have to comply with both Cower Cycle, and now the Water Board has stepped up 5 years ago, and a lot of new regulations on containment and pads and ponds, which costs a lot of money to do, and it knocks some folks out of doing composting. There's a lot of grant funding coming up. There's $10 million for wastewater anaerobic digestion that was released. There's $55 million coming out in the summer and fall under Cower Cycle. So one thing we fight as part of the California Compost Coalition, we always try to get grant funding. Only about $3 million a facility. It helps out a lot. So well, as we permit these facilities, we're looking at the potential for grant funding for in-county facilities. We're supporting the community compost and not less than 750 square feet and up to 100 cubic yards on site. There could be a bunch of them. There's grant funding for that coming up for $5 million this summer from CalRecycle. But that's not enough capacity for the projected waste stream. We're talking 16,000 new tons of food waste. And so there's got to be some type of local capacity that we can develop next 3 to 5 years while we're having that short-term transfer to a permitted food waste facility. And we support backyard composting with training and verification. And that's but that will not be enough capacity in order to show 15 years of data capacity for that new SB 1833 waste stream that's got to be diverted by 2025. So in summary, it's a lot easier to relocate a recycling center by right zoning than permit a new organic transfer station. Food waste transfer may be feasible as soon as January 1st, 2023, where SB 619 allows 1 year of phase-in without administrative penalties. So we got some breathing room. I will verify on March 4th when I come up with the county environmental health on the 30-day solid waste permit amendment process. And then I believe the next scheduled meeting is we can report back on March 10th on the direction that we need to go once we verify if we can get it permitted as soon as I think I can, like I've done throughout California on many other locations. That's my presentation. I'm here to answer any questions. And thank you for this opportunity. And I hope to see some of you next week on March 4th and the 5th when I visit Humboldt County and First Friday.
Thank you, Evan. That was excellent. Board, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Edgar?
Can we screen share so I can see the board? Would that be okay?
Oh, I'll stop sharing right now. Okay.
Thank you.
There you go.
Perfect. Just make it easier to call on people. Okay. Any question? All right. Representative Madrone.
That had to get my earphones on. Nice presentation. Thank you for that. I'm just curious, the problems we're hearing about Hambro locating in Arcata. Of course, we'll probably be talking about that more on the next agenda item. But gosh, it might have been nice if they could have reoccupied the Arcata recycling center from 20 years ago and the permitting would be all streamlined and everything. But I doubt that's the case because that facility hasn't been there for a long time. And I think we'll probably delve into this more when we get to the next item. But we got to do something real quick. We'll talk. I'll jump in when we get to that conversation. Thank you.
Do other board members have questions? I have a couple, but I can hold mine.
Yeah, I have a question, I guess.
Thank you, Frank.
So, actually, I guess it's kind of a weird presentation or weird timeline because we still have to decide what we want to do with the CRV issue. If is my understanding correct that the space it's intended would take the CRV space and eliminate, it would take that space that would be used for CRV would have to go to the 1383 separation space.
That's my recommendation because it falls within a solid waste footprint and it makes it a lot easier to permit it. So that's correct.
Because one of the questions that I've asked several times and never really been able to get an answer is how this separation of the food waste versus, I guess, green waste or other solid waste, how it was going to be done has never been directly answered. Everybody him-hawed around it for the last couple of years, and we've never had an answer as to how this is going to take place. And so I'm asking, how is this separation going to take place?
There's two ways. There's at the point of generation where there's separation, and then it's collected and hauled over to the transfer station. So at the point of generation, and with the residential sector, there would be a lot of outreach and education by the haulers, both Recology and Humboldt Sanitation, working with the city in order to discuss it with the residential community on putting the food waste in a plastic or compostable bag And some people have buckets. So there's a lot of ways to take the residential food waste into the green cart, but we're recommending the plastic bags so that we can remove them at the transfer station. And that when we do that, it keeps the clean green, and we can keep that within Humboldt County for West Green composting. Otherwise, if it's dumped in a pail and mixed with all the green waste, Cal Recycle says that has to go to a food waste compost facility, all of that, all the green waste and the food waste from residential. And we don't have any local capacity in Humboldt County for food waste. So by separating out the bagged food waste from the green waste and then the bagged food waste would be put in with a commercial sector, and the residential can still stay in Humboldt County. So that's the residential side. On the commercial side, there'd be a lot of training at the back of the house of all the restaurants and institutions. And Recology has done this for years there, and throughout the state. So they have a program where they train the commercial generators, and plus the 1383 puts a responsibility on the generator to separate out. So there is a generator responsibility with proper training. And even when the commercial is separated out, it's still contaminated. So at the compost facility, they still have to remove all the contamination, or there's options you can do it at your transfer station one day if you want to do it there. But right now, it's easy to transfer it out. So with 1383, you got generator responsibility, you got source separation, you got training, outreach, and education, so that by January 1st, 2023, everybody's on the program. And then once it's hauled over to the transfer station, we remove the bag waste, and then the food waste is in a bunker, and then it gets hauled down to a permitted a food waste compost facility down south in whether it be Colton Creek, or other permitted facilities in Northern California.
That can be out of the county?
Yes, it would be, because we interviewed all the composters in county, and I'll be doing some site visits. And right now, none of them are permitted to take food waste, only green waste. And we want to keep it that way. We want them to keep on getting the green waste and don't have to transport that out of county with a food waste. So keep green waste in Humboldt County and transfer out the food waste to a permitted facility in Northern California. Right now, that same food waste is being sent to Dry Creek landfill with your garbage. So it's being exported right now to Dry Creek. So instead of sending it to a landfill with your garbage, you send it to a permitted compost facility instead.
Robin.
My question is for Mr. Edgar, I guess. I would like to, well, let me back up a little bit. I've already been asked by a couple of residents in Ferndale about the thing that most concerns them as ordinary folks who don't know how this is going to work. And when they ask me, I don't know either. So I'd like to have you go into a little bit of detail here, Neil, about the responsibility of the ordinary citizen and how the special little bag works. You know, does it get hooked into your main green garbage? Is it a separate bag? I'm thinking of a very smelly kitchen if it's hanging around in my kitchen before it gets outside into the garbage where the raccoons can get it. So can you give us a little more granular detail on that?
Definitely. Within a kitchen, a lot of people have little pails you can buy, and you can put a little plastic bag in your pail. It's a little 1 gallon thing, not a 5 gallon, but little, and then you put the food waste inside of there, and each day you can tie it off and they put it within the green waste cart. So as part of the collection system for 1383, they're going to require three carts: garbage, green for organics, and blue for recyclables. And that's what Recology gets to do, and Humboldt Sanitation can roll that out by January 1st, 2023 with education and training much before there. So the general public will have in their kitchen and at each meal, they can scrape the food waste. And it may be, some of these facilities may not want meats or dairy, but most of them can take meats and dairies, not just plant-based food waste, but all food waste. So that's the outreach and education with pictorial graphics on top of your green cart. There'll be a sticker, and a sticker will show, oh, and within the green waste cart, I can put apple core, I can put cottage cheese, bad yogurt. And then, so it'll be a lot of training on what types of organics can go into the green cart and how it gets there. It could be a daily or every other day, drop the bag into the green cart, and then green cart gets picked up by the hauler, and it goes to the this transfer station, and the bag is taken out and taken into the commercial pile to be transferred out, and the green stays clean green so that it can still go to West Green under the current contract till 2027.
Well, thank you. That helps quite a bit. Thanks very much. I won't look quite so stupid when I get asked.
And we have a member of the public, Stephen, with your hand raised, but we're going to let the board members ask their questions, and I'll get to the public questions in just a moment. Representative Madrone, and then, sorry, just real quick, Representative Wilson, did you have more questions, or is that all of your questions?
I was not actually done, no.
Okay. Let me go ahead and go back to Representative Wilson, and I'll come to you, Steve.
Are you back to me? Is that?
Back to you.
Okay, the part that I guess I'm struggling with, or I have in the past, when I've heard this thing about mixing it with the green waste, you're taking plastic bags and you're going out there and you're throwing them in a green, whatever, a green waste container. And in that green waste, you can have a lot of different things. You can have branches, wood debris. It can be kind of a rougher kind of material. It's not as smooth. You throw a plastic bag into these types of containers, there's a really good chance that you're going to destroy that plastic bag or cause it to rip open, and you'll be having the food waste in with the green waste. And so it sounds great in theory, but it doesn't sound real practical.
No.
And somewhere that's going to end up in I guess at this point, the haulers, in our case, Recology, is going to have to bring that. First, they're going to come pick that green waste up, and they pick that up with the truck, and they dump it dump it in the truck, and then dump more green waste on top of that green food waste. They bring that to their hauling facility and dump that all out on the ground. And then I guess I heard one person describe this. They put on hip waders and went out with hip waders and grab all these bags and bring these bags out and take them and sort out the food waste and clean out the contamination. So it's all a good theory, and it's a good idea. I just don't see that anybody has yet to come out with this practical solution is how to do this.
Evan,
that's what I'm struggling with.
Evan, I'll take this one. Board Member Wilson, this is Eric Keller, Director of Operations for Humboldt Waste Management. This scenario that we're describing is not the ideal scenario. This isn't even the preferable scenario. This is one of the only scenarios that we have left due to the stagnation that Humboldt County as a whole has done with all of their permitted green waste facilities. So in a perfect world, West Green or any of the other organics processing facilities would already be permitted for food waste. So it would not necessitate removing the material. You could put all of that material in your green can. It goes to the permitted AD facility or food waste processing facility, and it all gets treated at the same location. Because there is no permitted facility in Humboldt County currently, This is one of the best options, unfortunately, we have. Now, I don't think anybody, Peter, myself, Evan, they're not going to tell you this is a great option. It's not going to be the best option. It's not going to have the best capture rate. But outside of creating a 4-cart system, which would be even more costly to each one of our member agencies, this is kind of one of the only ways that we can go with it.
And Eric, picking up on that, in practice, we've done this in a lot of 8 different locations right now over the last 6 months I've permitted. And in practice, you're right, Mr. Wilson, that in practice, our bag's ripped. And a lot of times there is leakage, but we get most of it. What's left over is, and this is a policy I'm getting through Cower Cycle, who's supporting this, because there's not enough food waste composting capacity in California, but there is enough green waste capacity. So keeping it green, but what's left over from the ripped bags is more de minimis. Sometimes you get a banana peel, apple core. So we've seen it in practice, and many locations we're doing it with the LEA. And even though there is de minimis amounts that get through, the county health department and the Cower Cycle, it will still support us by calling this clean green with this type of system.
Thank you. Board Member Madrone and then Board Member Matthews.
Great questions. And thanks for that response, Eric. I recognize that, yeah, there's no ideal here, no perfect, right? And we're dealing with what the reality is. Mm-hmm. Ideally, in our plan, though, we would identify short-term, medium-term, long-term. In an ideal world, we would be gathering up all this kitchen waste and all of the grass clippings separated from the woody debris and the fish waste from Nordic Aqua Farm that's going to be producing a massive amount of fish waste. And so in the long term, the most ideal thing is when people take care of the compost at home, or the kitchen waste at home and their grass clippings and their leaves, and they build a compost system. That is the ideal. Short term, long term, medium, it doesn't matter what term. That is the number one ideal. But of course, that works well for people that want to do it. It takes education and time and all of that. Whereas in the city, it's a little more difficult, but even in the city on a small lot, you can be composting. I mean, it's really not that hard. So I would love to see us in our plan identify, in the short term, we're stuck with not having a lot of facilities. We've got to haul this away. This is the best way we know to do that. In the medium term, it looks like this, and in the longer term, it looks like this. Making compost with fish waste, grass clippings, and kitchen waste, that's prime A-grade soil that you're making from the mixture of those things. That is just an amazing soil product that comes out of that. What is it, Fortuna? Somebody locally, I believe it was Fortuna, is giving away compost because they have too much of it. They've built up, right? I think there was somewhere in Humboldt that was doing that recently. Fortuna. Yeah. So it's a valued product, and ideally the grass clippings didn't have a bunch of herbicides dumped on it, right? So there's some nuances around the purity of all that. The other issue that came up was Director Smith was mentioning raccoons. So whether you live in town or not, we all have woods immediately around us, or even running through the city. So you think, okay, Eureka is a city. Well, there's gulches and greenways and creeks running through, and there are coons all over the place. And there are bears. And, these coons and bears get pretty well habituated on the blue cans or the green cans really quickly. They figure it out within a few days that, dinner in the blue can, whatever. And none of these cans have any latches, right? And so it is absolutely true that if you're putting this stuff, even in a bag, in your bin, and it's sitting there for a week, you're going to have varmint problems, right? And so, we all have gone to great lengths to deal with that with bungee cords, drilling in and putting latches on our thing, and then trying to remember to undo the latch before the garbage guy comes by to pick it up. Because if it's latched, it's not going to work when they dump it over the top, right? So there's some complexities there, but I think we can figure this all out in a medium term and longer term approach to things that are valid, that really lay out, this is all we can do now. This is where we can get in a couple of years, and this is where we ultimately want to be. Nothing being hauled out of the county at all. No fossil fuels being used to drive it to wherever, but everything is being processed right here in our community. And those soil products are reused on playgrounds, school, fields, picking it up like people are doing in Fortuna right now, et cetera. Or if we actually do so well that we have an abundance of it, it could be an exported product, right? Like so many other good things. So if you're going to haul it somewhere, let's get some money back for it rather than paying to haul it somewhere and dump it, right? So those are just some thoughts about short-term, medium-term, long-term.
Noted. That'll be part of the roadmap that comes out next Wednesday.
Thanks, Representative Madron. If possible, let's keep it to, I know this is just we're just getting direction, but let's keep it to questions for now. And then I would like to let the public speak, and then we'll kind of get back into the board's perspectives. Representative Matthews.
I'm good if you want to move on.
Oh, no, I mean, do you have a question?
No, it's just something that we talked about at our council meeting last week. So I appreciate this, but some of the people in Arcata brought up that people are already getting their compost hauled away by some other places like Local Worm Guy or Full Cycle Compost. Is that still going to be able to happen, or are we kind of stuck with this method?
I can answer that. We are supporting community compost. So within the state regulations, you can go up to 750 square feet and up to 100 cubic yards. So that's great opportunity to do so. But there is I'm not covering franchise law, but I covered it elsewhere. There's a franchise law that says if any solid waste or food waste is being generated and a third party comes in, that breaks the franchise law if it's fee for service. If somebody were to donate or sell it, so anybody can donate or sell or self-haul their food waste to a facility, a community compost, and that would not be against the franchise law. And I don't know what your franchise says in Arcata, but most of them are the same under case law that third parties, not franchise, cannot charge a fee for service, but they can donate or sell it to community compost.
So what you said, this is essentially going to put them out of business? Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, at this time, I did talk to Recology, and they appreciate the services they have if it's needed. So with regards to doing that, but eventually, if they want to exercise their franchise, that fee for service is being charged like it is, but if it was a donate or sell, if they were to haul it there and just give it to the community compost, that would not break the franchise law. So it's up to the franchisee to make a complaint should they want to.
Okay, thank you so much.
A couple questions. So it sounds like there will be more, since the compost won't be going to any current facilities, there will be more vehicle miles traveled through this proposition.
Correct. I did an analysis. Right now, the vehicle miles are going to Dry Creek with your food waste and MSW. So the vehicle miles travels will be going southbound. But I've done a lot of case study, and I will add that to the roadmap. And it's about 8 to 1 ratio, or 8 to 10 to 1, whereby the amount of emissions that a diesel truck would emit by long hauling food waste, you get 8 times more benefit on greenhouse gases from the methane that is avoided at the landfill. And I will add that to the roadmap because methane is a short-lived climate pollutant that is 80 times stronger than CO2 over a 20-year period. So all that methane avoidance is 8 times greater than emissions coming from the hauling of the food waste. So it's a net benefit on greenhouse gases, but instead of traffic going northeast, the traffic will go southbound.
Okay. And then let's see, what I get just a quick process question. We're giving direction today, and then this will be coming back for a formal opinion, or how is this relating to the local task force?
Well, I'm sorry, that's my understanding that we're seeking direction today as to, and this is going to dovetail obviously into CRB, which is next. I'm seeking board's directions. Okay, we presented this from Edgar. We're going to talk about CRB. What route would you like us to take? And if, depending on the board's pleasure, we will come back in March with numbers and scenarios and things of that matter.
Okay.
I realize it's a little sticky because CRB is obviously as interesting to people on the board right now as organics processing. Senate Bill 1383 is something that's now fallen upon all of us, and to the board members respectfully that have asked these questions. I'm the new guy here and I've stepped into Senate Bill 1383. I don't know what's going on, and I'm learning from Edgar and Eric. So your questions are heartfelt by me because I'm asking all the same ones. How is a promulgated law that's an enormous undertaking going to actually hit the road in the kitchen and in the yard of every, denizen and where all that? So
Chairwoman Castellano, basically what we're doing is we're seeking direction from the board if you would like HWMA staff to pursue this opportunity and come back to the board at a later date, most likely the March regularly scheduled meeting, with an outlined budget and a little bit better detail on the timeline of this project.
And will there be conversations with the local task force between now and or I know that group has also been working on this.
I would have to look at when the local task force next meeting is scheduled. So I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
Plus, when I, Chairperson, when I come up on March 3rd and 4th, I'll be meeting with key members. So I'll be shopping this. I have a nice PowerPoint presentation and a staff report by by Peter and Eric. So I'll be shopping and be talking to Robin and other key members of the local task force as I go through the organic roadmap for 1383.
Great. And then I guess I just wasn't completely clear from when Representative Matthews was asking. So basically, my understanding is that Eureka doesn't have franchise, or the franchise agreement doesn't list organics. So in Eureka, will the worm guy still be able to charge a fee for service to pick up people's compost?
So, HWMA staff would recommend each member agency meeting with not only their legal counsel, but their individual franchise haulers to discuss those type of issues. So HWMA staff not intimate enough with all your member agency franchise contracts. So we would be hesitant to comment on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so it seems like there's still some things that would have to be worked out about that. Okay, I'm going to open it up to the public now. Let's see, let's have Stephen Avis and then Robin Prasker.
Thank you very much. I was going to echo comments of Board Member Wilson, but I was very relieved by Steve Adjourning's approach of doing the short-term, medium-term, and long-term. I think that's a reality that we can live with. It won't be perfect, but it'll be good. My other question was on the grants that are coming available, millions of dollars of grants. One of the problems that rural counties have is that they are at a disadvantage getting grant money. We don't have big teams of grant writing personnel available necessarily. It's hard to compete with the big urban areas. And I'm wondering, does the Senate bill have any advice for how counties like Humboldt will be able to secure the funding that they need to help us move through this process in a timely fashion?
Great question, Stephen. CalRecycle is administering these grant dollars, and they have taken upon themselves to have regional equity. In this last $10 million grant for wastewater, they're going to have a northern and southern distribution. The other grant they had for local government assistant that a lot of people recently got that applied for on February 1 distributed that money equally based on per capita. So to recognize that it's a fair share for that money. But with regards to those large grants, you are correct. With regards to, in order to get those large grants, you have to have a shovel-ready project. And a lot of places have shovel-ready with regards to having all the environmental impact reports done, have the air permits done in some counties where that takes a lot of effort. So CalRecycle doesn't prioritize it based upon regional equity. They prioritize it based upon being shovel-ready, boots on the ground, and ready to deploy those grants dollars as soon as possible to permitted facilities. So in the case of Humboldt, without having a permitted facility, that will be a food waste facility, but it could be available for green waste facilities. There's a lot of water board regulations on upgrades to have pads and ponds, and that has knocked a lot of composters out of the game, and other people have to step up. So these grant dollars are valuable and needed. And I got some in Yolo County. I got one in Lake County, Napa County. So they have been some type of rural regional equity in the past on small communities, and I was able to enjoy that on the third round and fourth round, and the fifth round is coming out in the fall time.
Great. Thank you very much. That was very helpful. And for Chair Castellino, I am an alternate board member. I just haven't had a chance to sit in officially before. So glad to be here. I may see you again. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Typically, if the main board member is present, the alternate, doesn't sit on the board with
Exactly.
Yeah.
I got it. I'm good.
We're still glad you're here, though, Steve.
Yes, we're definitely glad you're We're definitely glad you're here.
Thank you very much.
Robin Prasker.
Thank you. From City of Eureka here, I just want to jump in to just clarify a few things. So I think when Board Member Castellano was referring to the LTF's involvement in the co-collection brainstorming and proposal I think she more so was just checking with making sure each city's respective staff are in the loop so that each board member, when it is time to officially vote, has that background and info. So it sounds like Evan and the team will be up here early March. So it sounds like we're all going to get our FaceTime with him to get in the loop. So I think the challenging part was Board Member Castellano was looking for the Eureka update on this topic, and we hadn't heard this info till tonight. And we're all moving so fast, which is good. We got to be moving fast. So I think that's what she was getting at there with the LTF, because that doesn't meet till April. And then I did just want to clarify with Meredith's question. I know it was relative to Arcata, but it does affect the whole region. Eric spoke well, saying that, each city negotiates their own franchise agreement and contract, and we have not gotten quite to that point yet. So on Eureka's end, and I'm sure the other cities would probably appreciate similar verbiage, that we have not yet discussed who can and cannot have flow control over organics in the area. That'll be a sensitive topic. And on the Eureka end, we're open to any and all options. Recology is not contracted for organics with Eureka. And while it might be assumptive to say they'll receive it, that's a whole public negotiation process. Contracts will go to each council and it will be very transparent. So we're just not quite there yet. So nobody's getting put out of business right now. I just want to make that very, very clear.
Thanks, Robin.
Yes.
Any other members or board members want to speak on this item? Okay, we'll take it back to the board. Representative Madrone.
Yeah, I heard a couple of really nice points in that last set of comments there. One was to Stephen Avis. There are a lot of grant monies out there. And if we don't have grant writers on board, we're going to miss opportunities. I mean, this is true for the county. It's true for the cities. And if you hire a really good grant writer, they basically bring in enough money to pay their salaries, as well as bring in money for other things, So when you get somebody that gets 8 out of 10 of the grants that they write, you're dealing with an expert who can really bring in money and make things happen. And this is true at the county. I'm constantly lobbying or educating my board about the need to add more professional grant writers into all of our departments, because there is so much money coming down for so many things these days. And we know at the county that we're missing out on millions and millions of dollars, that we could spend a couple $100,000 on some extra grant writers and be bringing that money in. So I very much want to encourage us as a board to think about what are our needs at the Waste Management Authority in terms of that, and how can we consider budgeting for improving and increasing our collective ability to do that. I don't know the budget. I don't know the process. I'm new to the board, but I am an expert with grant writer, and I'm more than willing to help with meeting with you, Peter, or others, and talk about how we might be able to do that. The other thing is, I want to just be really clear that it seems to me that if somebody is keeping all of their compost and their green waste on their own property and managing it themselves, not only should they not be charged any kind of a fee, but frankly, they ought to be given some incentive or some reduction on something for having done that, because it is the cheapest and best way to do it. But at the very bare minimum, I want to make sure that we're not charging people for taking care of it themselves. However we design this system, we don't want to penalize the responsible, good-natured people that have the ability and want to engage in composting. So I want to make sure that we have plenty of incentives in there for that. So those are my 2 comments.
Thanks, Representative Madron. Anyone else from the board have anything they want to add in? I'll just speak real quick. I definitely agree with Steve Madron's comments, and for sure the idea of short-term, medium-term, long-term plans resonate with me. And I believe that's, in your initial proposal, Evan, definitely something that you have been bringing to the table. So I appreciate that about your organization. I would like, in my ideal world, there would be some way of looking at these more, kind of like larger organizational solutions, like there's definitely a role for HWMA, for instance, and I can see where it's hard not to talk about the CRV and to talk about them separately. But, I can see where it makes sense in the short term for us to switch to this method. But I would also like to see us find grants for smaller organization, to work more as a cohesive system of saying there's also a role for the worm guy, and there's also a role for full cycle compost, and how can we actually work to find funding for these smaller organizations as well, along with larger solutions. I do think that people are going to freak out if there's not an answer to recycling and they're being asked to pay money for composting. My constituents are going to be very upset if they can't, because people are still frustrated about the lack of CRV redemption. And then to potentially have an extra fee put on them for green waste, for, some sort of potentially mandatory green waste collection is going to be really difficult. So I don't know. I definitely would like to find some solutions to work around that, or at least be thinking about this as a whole, because I just think it's there's people in my constituency that is a hard ask. They've already kind of lost this extra income, some people, and they're potentially going to be asked to pay more for a service they haven't had yet. So that's something I want to make sure we are thinking about, how to make that equitable.
Here, definitely. When I come up on the 3rd and 4th, I'd be meeting with Cal Poly Humboldt. They're thinking about doing community compost there, as well as I've got meetings with a worm guy and others to get ready for view their facilities and make sure they fit within a community compost regulations and they'll be eligible for funding. And with the $5 million coming out this summer, I have a grant writer here called Grant. He's my grant manager, and we get 8 out of 10 grants that we apply for. So I would reach out to them to see if they're interested, if they want to apply for grants, so we can assist them along the way. And when I come up on the 4th and the 5th, the leader of Abound for edible food recovery will be joining me, and he'd be doing a separate track meeting with all the key stakeholders on the edible food recovery program. We had a lot of telephone interviews the last couple of weeks, but with Michael coming up to meet with people in person to do FaceTime with all the different stakeholders on edible food recovery.
Chairwoman Castellano, I'd also like to note that this is not a either or scenario. The reason that this was brought to the board is because the value of the space that lies within our solid waste facility permit. If the board directs us to move forward with this, that does not mean that CRV can't happen somewhere else. So this isn't an either or decision. It's more of a, what can we do with this space with the timelines that we're given?
And do you know if other potential sites have been identified for CRV? If we do want to bring it back at some point? I guess what I can ask next.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, a couple have, but none of them are ideal, obviously, but yeah, we can discuss it a little bit later. But internally, about a year ago, we looked at a couple sites as well. Whether those are still on the market or not, I'd obviously have to take a look back at.
Okay, thank you. And we can loop back around. Okay, any other direction for Representative Madrone?
Sorry, I'm raising my hand a lot. Apologize. So, I was thinking if like Eric was saying, the space is so important, and Evan was talking about how it's easier to do one thing here versus the other. You can move CRV more easily than you can move organic waste processing. Is there going to be a possibility? Obviously, there's a transition that's going to occur there. We're almost to March. We need to get this done within a year. Is there going to be a transitionary period where we might be able to use the existing CRV facility for another 4 months, 6 months, while we get ready to make the shift to the other facility? Or are we going to need to vacate that whole area right away in order to make the transition by the end of the year? So just wondering about options.
Well, I would say, and I'll defer to Eric too, he can jump in if this is not correct, but right now, if it has to be a transition, it has to be a transition. I don't know. If we're asked to provide that, we will come back to the next meeting and maybe the one after that with vetted numbers and scenarios. The way I see it now is, if depending on the pleasure of the board, we'll look at everything we can to make it work. I mean, these are both huge undertakings, and CRV we'll get to it in a minute, but has its own challenges, as everyone knows. So does food waste now. So you're right about the space. Everyone's concerns are valid as to what we need to do. If we need to transition, if that's the way to make it work, as the director here, that's what I see what we'll need to do. But Eric and I will be vetting that if need be, to come back and be able to say A, B, or C, D, E, or F, these are the concise requirements, and this is what we're looking at. My goal is to simply, depending on where we want to go with this, present the realities of what it's going to mean, what is it going to cost, what is it going to look like for the constituents, how will the public, be affected, and how can we keep everyone safe, and how can this be operational in the best interest of everyone? So if it needs to be transitional, I don't see why not, but I don't know. Right now, I don't know. We'd have to crank it out and look at all the scenarios. And I want to say, go on the record here and say, I very much agree with the assessment about if I'm composting, I shouldn't be penalized for that. And I think that's well stated. And I think that that's certainly an incentive for all of us to become better composters, but I appreciate the comment.
Thank you. Any other directions from the board? Representative Smith.
Thank you, Leslie. In listening to what's been said by a couple of people, it seems to me that there is a kind of firmness to that outdate that we've got facing us. I mean, that it really is a year, or perhaps not. I mean, I would ask Neil if there's a history of sloppiness in these timelines, because if we take it seriously and start running around doing stuff to get ready, and then it's not really necessary because Mendocino takes 18 months to get their stuff together and there's no penalty. Well, that's not a very good business option. So that would be the first thing. If there really is some pressure about it, I would very strongly recommend that we get some hard knowledge about potential facilities for CRV. These options I've seen before in other venues where it looks as if there are options sort of half on the table and half off. But then 6 months later, we still don't have a real sense of how much money the alternate facility, which right now seems to me is sort of imaginary. What Eric said, he said, well, we looked last year and didn't see anything. Well, I'd like to hear in 1 month's time, if possible, and if the other board members agree, that we signal our mild concern regarding movement, meaning report back from staff on these following items, 1, 2, 3, 4. And one of them would, in my mind, has to be the alternate facility. Otherwise, you're stuck with this going to food waste, which has its own stream of problems attached to it, and nothing ready for CRV. And CRV, I don't need to tell anyone on this board, is still a very hot item. Leslie pointed at this earlier, where there's a significant minority of the population that depends upon CRV for income. I mean, I can get so many dollars. They count them all, those little bottles. They've got their big 39-gallon plastic bags full of them, put them on the front of their bicycle, and off they go. And it's going to be, it's not their total income, but it's something that they have relied upon now for many years. And now it seems to be, as far as they're concerned, gone. And well, geez, that doesn't seem right to me. And we need to signal that we're moving to the best of our ability to get the information that's needed to get the CRV up and running. And I know that I'm sort of stealing time from the discussion about CRV, which is coming up, but I think that it's entangled with the issue that we're discussing now. Thank you for listening.
Councilman Smith, I can answer the question about timelines. Last year, when we passed SB 619, SB 1383 bought a year without administrative penalties till 2023. And we got a lot of money. We got the local government grants. $270 million came from the surplus into 1383 planning. So that's great. So we got time and money. So we're already bought a year. So this expectation that Cal Recycle wants these programs in by 2023. They would put jurisdictions on a compliance order for people who don't do that. And then they come up there and they put on a compliance order. And that's when they may issue a notice of violation on a compliance order. And that when the penalties could start kicking in at $10,000 a day. But you have to demonstrate when you're on a compliance order, you're making a substantial effort to implement these programs. So they want to see a substantial effort, and that is 2023 now, but they're going to respond to people who did apply for 619 extension to 2023 and put them on a compliance order to start 2023. If they don't make it, then they're going to come back to make sure there's a substantial effort to do so.
Well, I think that what I'm hearing from you, Neil, is that the timeline, what that just says to me is the timeline's real, because once they come in, they're going to come back normally, at least I know with these situations. There's 2 or 3 outliers in every organization that has groups, counties in this case, and they nail those outliers. And I don't want Humboldt County to be one of them.
Understood.
Thank you. Any other board members have any direction they want to give to Evan Eggers, to staff, to Peter and Eric? I guess for my part, it sounds like we need to do something. So, I support taking action versus just kind of sitting around without doing anything. I do think that, again, we have to have some plans around CRV, which we can talk about. And again, just cost is something that I know you're not coming back with an analysis just yet, but it's something I think is going to be really important. Just both for equity, but also for people's sense of actually really engaging with this,
Yes.
So, the more we can find ways of making it not cost prohibitive for people, and maybe that's, I don't know. I'm assuming it's already probably been analyzed that getting everyone a home worm composter is not the solution. But, if it was, I'd like to know. Yeah, I don't know. Do you all have enough direction to move forward at this point? I feel like it's been not real forceful from the board because there's sort of bigger issues that we're all weighing together.
Chairman Castellano, I think perhaps it'd be better. Everyone's chomping at the bit to move to CRV, and these two they're kind of joined at the hip in terms of this meeting. Why don't we talk about that? And then I think maybe the board direction will be clear after that point. Suggestion?
Great. Okay.
We can't go. Thank you.
Yeah. And reopen item number 4 if we need to after item number 5, I believe. So we will move on to item number 5, receive review of the Eureka Recycling Center and Hambro CRV status from Executive Director and give direction for path forward.
So thank you, Chairman and members of the board. I know the CRV, since I stepped in here and came back to California, I remember what it started to be when I was much younger than I am now, and certainly has become equally, if not more important, for many of the reasons that you've eloquently pointed out. CRV right now, I'm going to cut to the chase on this. If you've read the staff report in paragraph 3 on page 2 of the staff report, Hambro is essentially still 6 months away, even now, from where they were before they can come online with any kind of CRV center. So if the direction from the board is no, go ahead and let's wait for Hambro for another 6 months. What does that do to the constituency? I don't know. I know that's not a popular statement, but that's where they are right now. Hambro has told us they're still 6 months out before they can come online. My recommendation about CRV here at Eureka Recycling Center is that I would recommend against it only for 3 reasons. We don't have the space and the manpower right now to manage CRV and do recycling the way we currently are and maintain existing recycling levels. We can't do both in the same place effectively. The COVID-19 has pushed staffing levels to the point where we operationally at very minimum as it is. And we would still need, if we were to bring CRV back here, we'd need at a minimum 2 additional previously frozen staff positions to man that, to prepare for it. There's also the issue of glass processing and crushing, and either we're going to bring that in-house and become certified ourselves, hire a licensed driver in a truck, or we're going to have to contract out for those services. Either way, there would be a fiscal impact for that. That does not mean we can't do CRV. I just think to echo Eric, and he can jump in here, Eric, anytime, but right now, in terms of how this fits in with food waste, if we bring organic waste if we use the critical space right now that is now the Eureka Recycling Center, and we bring the food waste there and start doing the manual sort and the work necessary there in phases, that means we'd have to relocate the recycling center. And that would also mean we'd lose it for a CRV place. But if it's not going to make sense to do CRV here anyway, wouldn't that be a good option? And then we'd be moving forward on both the waste organics and potentially a new site to do recycling and CRV. Either way, though, it's going to be there's going to be some juggling involved. But in terms of right now, I'm recommending respectfully against CRV at Eureka Recycling Center. For those reasons I've given. But right now, Hambro is still 6 months out. So that's the gist of the staff report. If you haven't read it, I didn't want to waste more time with that. I thought it would be the interest of the board to know that's where we are with it right now. And then the floor is yours. And we, of course, act at the pleasure of the board. We'll do what you need us to do, but it's going to take some vetting and some, we're going to have to see what we need to do with this and put hard numbers to this to echo the concerns that have already been raised. So that's what I have.
Thank you, Director Fuller. I know this isn't an easy process to come into, so.
No, that's okay. I mean, I understood it's not easy, but that's okay. We obviously need to do solutions. And I do want to go on record and say, as I've said before, we have to do this together. We don't do it. We can't roll out a Senate Bill 1383 and revolutionize the way we collect our organics and have CRV and have effective recycling and keep costs down and make sure our constituents are taken care of if we're going in different directions. So to me, this is the start of the necessary, arduous, but necessary process of let's figure out what we need to do. So I'm here, you tell us.
Any board members have questions?
Yeah, I do.
Go right ahead.
Am I clear in understanding that there's actually 3 spaces needed? Is the recycling center doing something besides CRV that we're having to do in the recycling center for recycling itself? Or is it just for CRV?
Go ahead, Eric, please.
Board Member Wilson, so in the past, the Eureka Recycling Center served as the hub for CRV redemption value and single stream drop-off material. This includes scrap metal, e-waste, Freon, non-Freon appliances, cardboard, general plastic recycling, like Rubbermaid totes, stuff like that. In its current capacity right now, it still serves all those purposes minus CRV. So we still collect all that single stream drop-off material or source separated drop-off material, Freon, non-Freon appliance. We've expanded it a little bit out to accept cooking oil, some other products as well. But it serves both of those purposes, but they will be in the same general location.
So then if I understand this correctly, then irregardless, if we bring the organic waste activities into the facility, then we still have to find a location for the recycling center even without CRV. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
And I don't know if I need to chime in now or I'm saying on my part with the CRV. It is disappointing that Hambro told us what they told us. I don't know if what the oversight was there about not being able to bring this about and be done. CRV needs to be addressed somewhere in the county. We've gotten away with it because we stepped aside from it and decertified and went through all of those types of situations. So we're not doing it. To bring that back is a whole major endeavor in itself. And I guess if I'm going to lump all of my statements into one request, is what Director Fuller has told us, is that they want to put this together and give us the options of what those things will cost. And we've already been told repeatedly that CRV collection, because of traffic, because of space, because of the glass issue came up partway through it as one that was particularly concerning, that we have to deal with that. The whole recycling thing is crazy, a little along the side of CRV, but the county really wants to have something with the at least the people I talk to want to have something with the CRV to be able to do something with theirs. And so I would appreciate having some of this stuff detailed out to the board, that we can see our alternatives in the next meeting. If we can't get them all, if we can get a fairly reasonable perspective of what we're facing to move towards making a more intelligent decision. And that's what I would ask for, is to get the information brought to us. And I think that's what I understood Peter was saying, that he would get that information so we could understand it. That's all I had.
Thanks. And then we have Representative Matthews and then Representative Smith.
Hi, I just wanted to say that I really understand the problems we're facing with CRV. I just, want to go on the record that's saying that I'm very nervous for Arcata. Should we be the only recycling center? Just the influx of that much traffic and everything that comes with having a recycling center, it just it makes me nervous. I don't have a solution, and I don't envy you for having to make it, but yeah.
Representative Smith.
The things that have just been said by the last two or three speakers seem to me to lead in just one direction, which is, look, the CRV recycling center, whatever its proper name is, needs to be separate, and therefore potential facilities need to be at least explored by staff with a report back fairly soon, given the amount of time that it takes, to look at a place, decide on the square footage, its location, all of that stuff, then talk to all the real estate agents. What goes on and on and on. It takes a long time. Everybody knows that. But we just have to be realistic about the whole issue of the CRV recycling being anywhere near the present facility. It's not going to work. It's too much in one building and too many things happening, with all the problems that arise when you're trying to pack too many people, too much machinery into a confined space, a predetermined space. So I think it's important to just think we need to bite the bullet, look at the look at what we can do, find a place that people can come with their 1956 Chevy truck and dump the stuff off and not have to wait and have the time standard take a photograph of a line of vehicles that everybody sneers at. So I would plead with staff to get back to us as soon as possible, if not for March, if that's just simply a ridiculous deadline, then for the April meeting regarding potential facilities, what they are, where they are, what the pluses are, location, size, square footage, cost, versus the downside. I always like to know, what is going to kill our idea of putting a facility in Cutton? Well, everyone can think of what is going to stop it being in Cutton. But yeah, list that in there. Armed rioters would be one of those. So I'll stop making jokes and silly ideas, but really the heart of what I'm saying is pretty clear. We need to know alternatives, and we need to separate ERV away from everything else that we are doing. Otherwise, it's going to be catastrophic. Large word, but large problem. Thank you.
Representative Madrone.
Yeah, Representative Smith, I very much appreciate your comments. We started out this meeting today by talking about, we have two options here in regards to organic waste and recycling, and it's easier to cite a new CRV or recycling center somewhere than it is an organic waste, and yet it doesn't look easy to me at all. Hambro's been at it, 6 to 9 months, and no end in sight. And I know that's the Coastal Commission. It's the city of Arcata. There's lots of issues with permits and layers and all this stuff. But frankly, I'm about ready to be lynched. I think they're stringing together the plastic six-pack, plastic things together into some sort of a noose. If I could estimate the volume of calls and emails that I get, and I'm sure Leslie gets, and any other representative here, I'm sure you're all getting them. People are fed up. I've got 5 32-gallon barrels in my yard, and I'm sure, everybody has 3 to 5 barrels, bags. Add it up, 100,000, 120,000 people times. We have a mountain of backlog in Humboldt County, and that's one element. As soon as we open something up, no matter where it is, no matter how it's run, it's going to be overwhelming, frankly, in the first couple of months just to process and handle this mountain of backed up material that people, they want their nickel back, And at one point on the board, I said, we ought to all take our bags and barrels down to Cal Recycle and dump them on the lawn, and say, here you go, and get some attention. And unfortunately, the whole state isn't experiencing this. It's mostly Humboldt.
Right.
But the whole state is experiencing a very broken Cal Recycle CRV system. Oregon, a long time ago, set up the machines at the stores to process. You go to the store and you get 2 bags of groceries, you bring in a half a bag of bottles and cans, and you do it all together. And, Julia is here on the call, and Caltrans and Clean California has some resources that might be able to help us with some of this in the short term. And again, I think this is a great opportunity, again, to think about short term, long term. And in the short term, what Hambro did up in Crescent City is a pop-up. A pop-up doesn't take nearly the permitting and delays and costs and everything else to make happen. That's why Hambro's been successful up in Crescent City. They may be paying prevailing wages. They may, it's just a tent in a portion of a parking lot that somebody's rented to them or whatever. So I feel very strongly that we as a board have to do something, and we need to do it now, not in 6 months, not in 12 months, not in 18 months. frankly, I'd like to keep my life. And people are getting really threatening. I mean, the people are upset about this stuff. So can we think about how we can do some pop-ups and start processing this mountain of material and get these pop-ups permitted and in place sooner than later, and then work on the medium or longer term of a really awesome facility that's well done with proper wages and all that other kind of stuff. But frankly, right now, I just don't think we have the ability just to sit back and wait. And if Humboldt is going to be another 6 months, I would love to see us provide some opportunity in the meantime. I wasn't on the board, but my understanding was Hambro wasn't even willing to site in Humboldt County if this board didn't agree not to open up. And, you know, they wanted to have like a sole source. Well, I don't know what the numbers are, and I don't know if this board ever saw a report on the numbers of the volume and the potential income or any of that kind of stuff. But what was it? Somebody just a minute ago was mentioning Arcata getting overwhelmed. Frankly, we need several centers. We need one in McKinleyville, Arcata, and
Yes,
Eureka.
we do.
We probably need something in Willow Creek like Tom's Trash used to do. We probably need one in Garberville, you know, ultimately. I'd love to be like Oregon, where we got something at every grocery store, and there's no need to have this other place. Although obviously somebody has to come and manage and maintain the big machine that things go into and process that timely and all that. So it's not like the machine does it all. But I really want us to think about what can we do in the short term. And Peter, I totally recognize the constraints of staffing. COVID has wreaked havoc on everybody with staffing, but theoretically, we're heading towards herd immunity at this point, one way or another, and heading for an endemic rather than a pandemic. And I hope that's true. I hope that's where we're all heading. So hopefully, you know, now that unemployment's run out with the big extra chunk, more and more people are going to be looking at wanting to get a job and all that good stuff. So I really want to speak strongly for doing something in the short term. And if we have an agreement with Hambro not to open up, well, that's not until they open up, right? I mean, there's no obligation on our part not to do something while they're still not open. So I would support trying to figure out some short-term stuff.
Thank you.
Sorry for all the passion. I apologize.
Oh, it's okay. It's good. I'm just curious, since Julia Peterson is here, and if you don't mind me putting you on the spot in terms of, you in public comment, you mentioned the possibilities for options through Clean California. I'm just curious if you've had those conversations with staff yet, or if you want to speak to the board about a little bit more about what you're indicating there.
So I have had conversations. Clean California has many different aspects, and I've met with Peter and Eric, as well as Steve Madrone, Supervisor Madrone. We haven't really figured out exactly how to help. Clean California is a 2 to 3 year initiative, depending on which aspect we're working on. So we're here to help and make a difference. Clearing a backlog is perfect for Clean California. We're trying to create lasting solutions. What we might want to do is something that would make sense with Clean California funding is some pop-ups to clear the backlog, to get that revenue that right now is leaving Humboldt County so that it can stay in Humboldt County and help some of the people who depend on that for an income, clear people's garages out, and you'll have something else for your barrels, Steve. But, we're pretty open to what we could make work for the community to partner if we can use our Clean California funds for it, because Clean California is to clean things up. And this is a lot of plastic material that we know is ending up on the side of the road. And we also know that when people move, if they've stored 5 bags, sometimes those end up on the side of the road or in a ravine. And where they used to be picked up immediately by someone who used that money right back in our community immediately, that's not happening at this time. So we don't know what is needed. We'd like to be part of the solution. I don't think we could be the solution, but we can definitely partner. And I love the idea of pop-ups. I think we could do something.
Thank you. Robin, I'm just going to see if any other members of the public want to speak, and then we'll bring it back to the board if that's all right with you. Any other members of the public? I don't see anyone out there, but okay, go ahead, Robin.
Oh, I think that the idea of the pop-up that I'd have to put in quotes is very exciting. But to me, as a non-CRV participant, it's a mystery. You know, part I hope of what staff can do so that we don't churn this matter around and around all night is, as part of the report, would be a brief explanation of what a pop-up is, what it does, how many CRV it can usually, what its daily or monthly capacity is, what the cost is. Is there a standard pop-up size? Is it dependent on a city's size? You know, those kinds of dumb basic details would really help me and perhaps some of the other directors get a real sense of what a pop-up means as opposed to a permanent, presumably much larger and more expensive facility. Because that would, if we all find out that the pop-up is a dream, you know, a kind of, well, yeah, it's something we talk about, but no one's ever done it in the last 5 years. Well, to hell with it then. Let's just get serious about a permanent facility. Thank you.
Representative Matthews.
Muted. Thanks. I just want to say that I love the idea of pop-ups, and I would appreciate like a deeper dive into what that looks like. You know, I know that there's like Supervisor Madron said, a huge backlog, and just if we could just assuage, you know, the mountains that people are having just to get us back to kind of ground zero, I think that would be wonderful.
And this is a place you might really help, Julia, if you've got, you know, if the money can be directed in a specific way, I'm sure it will help you when you turn back to look for funding. If there's a solid agreement behind you from this board, a kind of direction, as it were. Excuse me for breaking in. I'm sorry.
I'm not sure if like some kind of subcommittee would be something that would be appropriate here. I'm really interested in this, and I know just from our standpoint of the constituents of Arcata, people are chomping at the bit, and so if some sort of subcommittee would help kind of move the dial, I'd be happy to participate in something like that.
Are there other board members interested in a subcommittee?
I would pop up.
I think we, and Steve, Representative Madron.
Yeah, I'll pop up after my election's over with. Right now, it's pretty all-consuming with my job and campaigning. But, you know, there is some incredible data with Hambro. Hambro's been running, that's what Crescent City is. It's just a pop-up. And it's been running for several years now, very successfully. In fact, many people from our area have been hauling their loads up to Crescent City. But with the last chance grade, you never know if you're going to get there or not. You know, so I think there's some great data that can be gathered there. And there are a lot of other areas that have done these pop-ups. And I think it would also be neat for Julia and Peter to meet, obviously, and talk in more detail. Because Julia was mentioning not only, possibly helping with pop-ups, but could we initiate some pilot machines in Humboldt County somewhere, like, in McKinleyville or in Garberville or whatever? Can we start doing some of these things that can help lead us towards some of the more longer term solutions? Anyway, just a thought.
Just as a clarification and to temper the board's expectation a little bit, the Hambro facility is not a pop-up. It's a certified physical CRV redemption center. So that's their facility is no different than the Eureka recycling center in 2018. It's not a pop-up in the sense of we could have a one-day pop-up. The certifications and the permitting doesn't work like that for CRV. So that would be that's one of the main reasons that we were not allowed to try and adopt CRV appointments by appointments. It's the same reason, because of the laws and the regulations that govern permitted CRV facilities.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Eric. And so I'm sorry, jumping in there, through the chair. So at any rate, we did get that law passed, Eric. I believe that does now allow us to do appointments. And that's thanks to you and our community here that helped make that happen with Assemblyman Wood. The other thing that's important to recognize is that I believe this is true, that none of our franchise agreements cover CRV. They all did it because they were able to make a little bit of money out of it, in the past. But I don't think they're actually required under their franchise agreements to do CRV. Otherwise, they'd all be doing it. So, we were talking earlier in the meeting about franchises and with compost and, who's got what authority and can other people scoop in and make money. So in this case, I don't believe that any of our franchises have CRV in their agreements. Is that correct, Eric or Peter or Leslie, somebody that might know?
So again, HWA wouldn't be able to comment on each member agency's franchise agreement. What I can say is that the current CRV material that is in your curbside collected material, that revenue is used to offset the cost of collection and processing of that curbside collection MOU that all of the member agencies are under currently. So that dollar value is being used to offset the hauling and processing of that material.
Thank you. I just want to come back to Representative Matthews' interest in a committee. And so it looks like we have Robin, Meredith. I could do it too. My schedule's really busy, but I would do it maybe until Representative Madrone was able to do it. Yeah, but just in terms of, I do think this is going to take a little extra time and attention, outside of the board meeting to really feel like we can get into any depth on this. I think that's something that we can then pursue. Is anyone on the board opposed to a committee to get deeper into this? Or Representative Wilson, are you interested in being on a committee?
Oh, no.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. And opposed to Robin, Meredith, and I kind of going to more meetings? Great. Okay. I know my personal concern is wanting to make sure that, again, CRV, I know there's, like, my constituents really care a lot about CRV. I care more just about keeping things out of the waste stream. And so that's my biggest concern process as we shift to, if we're shifting to organics, is just making sure that, especially those things like appliances and paint and, things that have nowhere else to go, especially don't end up in the waste stream or on sides of roads or anything like that. That feels pretty important. it seems like you've gotten some good direction tonight for this particular issue. Just Director Fuller or Eric, do y'all have questions or anything that you need more direction from the board about?
Well, I'd just like to clarify, it's pretty clear to me, the board, and please jump in if I'm wrong. You want concrete options for CRV versus recycling versus organics and what it's all going to look like. Is that right?
That's what I would like.
Okay.
Yes.
Eric, okay. And I will pretty much what I expected as the fruit of our labors here at this meeting was that, of course, the board's going to want to know this. I'm not unaware of the issue that CRV has become, and certainly we can provide that. Eric, do you want to jump in here with anything?
Yeah, is the board looking to receive costs and information for CRV being re-implemented at the Hawthorne Street, the Eureka Recycling Center location, as well as offsite facilities, or just offsite facilities?
Both. I would say both.
Okay.
Important to have both so that, for the very obvious reason, compare.
And so then is it the board's direction that they would also like to see costs and an associated road path with permitting the organics processing at the Eureka Recycling Center's current location as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And something my understanding from the board, and I would like to just confirmation from the board, is that there's an interest in what happens over the next 9 to 12 months as well. Like, are there solutions for CRV recycling happen, in the very short term? And then how might the transition take place? And, and are there solutions that we can work towards through a transition as well? Is that my understanding from the board?
Yep.
Smith?
Chair, it's fairly commonplace on an active board when you have a major issue facing a board with low basic information, to keep that issue, that item on the agenda every month. You come back and staff says, well, things have changed between March and April. There's a new law. We've talked to people in Oakland and they are doing this. So I'm not sure who that gets addressed to you as the chair.
I believe we do have something items for both CRV recycling and 1383 already on the agenda. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chairwoman Castellano. CRV's been standing item for well over 2 years now. And then obviously SB 1383 for about the last 6 to 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Already there.
is this going to become an issue or a permanent sort of monthly report, even though it's brief, regarding, especially in the face of the fact that it looks as if we have at least a tentative subcommittee here, and they're going to want to report. And if I'm going to invest a lot of time, I want to be able to bring something back to the larger board and have their input saying you're on the wrong track, or, give us more of such and such a aspect of your report. So is this something that would meet with the board's approval or the chair's approval?
I believe it's already in existence, Director Smith.
Right.
So I think what I'm hearing is maybe just to create, to make, sometimes though it's a standing item on the agenda, you know, we go over it, we kind of breeze through it, let's say, pretty quickly. So what I'm hearing is a desire to do less breezing and more weighing in during those items.
Well said.
Let me just assure the board there won't be much breezing going on after this. There's a lot of work to be done. We will ensure that just because it's a standing item doesn't mean we get to blow through it. So points taken, and thank you.
Okay, anything else for this item?
Just thank you, Director Fuller, for your attention on this and your it appears your sincerity to take this to the forefront. And I thank you for that.
Well, when I was coming, just if you'll allow me, when I was coming into this position, one of the things I think that I said was, if we don't work together, we're not going to find solutions. And sticky topics are sticky because they're difficult to talk about and there are many challenges. And everyone, I think everyone I'm talking to is a very busy person for good reason. The old saying that if you want it done, you give it to a busy person. I'm very much encouraged and feel very welcomed by your board and public, your confidence in me. And certainly Eric is an incredible ops director. And Eric, I'm sorry I'm going to embarrass you, but you are. Together we can do this. There has to be a solution. If people care enough to have barrels full of recyclable materials and are frustrated enough to want to do the right thing with them, as Julie and some others have pointed out, then I want to provide those solutions, and together we can do that. So it's going to take work. Well, that's what we're here for. So I just appreciate that. Thank you, Frank.
Okay. Just to reiterate that, thank you, Director Fuller and Operations Director Eric. Sorry, I can never remember.
Keller. Keller or Keller Heckman?
Heckman, yeah, thank you, Sid. So let's close that item and move on to adjourning. Thank you all. Good to see you. And we will meet again at a regularly scheduled meeting in March.
March 10th.
Great. So see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.